Good morning team and welcome to week 8 in the geography classroom. It is nice to see you all. So I hope you all enjoyed last week's lesson on Canada, and I'm hoping that today's lesson, I'm hoping my change of venue gives you a little bit of a clue as to what we might be looking at today. Now, as ever, we're going to go through the list of things that you need to do the session, and then we'll do the quiz to make sure that you're remembering all the things that we're learning, and then we'll crack on with today. So, first thing that you're going to need today, as ever, big blank piece of paper. You will need your normal pencil. You will need your colouring pencils. Please make sure that you've got greens and that they're sharpened, because you're definitely going to need some greens. And I think that's about it. What an easy day. So the first thing that I want you to do then, like normal, is to write the numbers 1 to 8 on your piece of paper. Ready for the quiz. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So 4 of the questions, the first 4, are going to be about what we studied last week, and I know that I gave you guys an acronym to help you remember something really important that I said was going to be on the quiz, so maybe go through that in your head right now. And then the other 4 questions are on things that we've studied previously. So I'm just going to get my list so I can see it. Let's make a start. So question number 1, what was the name of the ecosystem that we studied in Canada? So question number 1, what was the name of the ecosystem that we studied in Canada? Okay, question number 2, what type of trees grow in Canada? Now, there was a really special proper name for them, but there are 2 other names that you could use instead, but I want the really special name if you can remember it. Okay, question number 3, what species consumes, as in eats, the snowshoe hare? So what species consumes the snowshoe hare? And then question number 4, the one we've all been waiting for, I would like you to use the acronym that we learnt last week. So TSDTTP, giving you a clue there, to name the 6 global ecosystems, or as I said last week, biomes. Now, I'm going to give you a little while to do that because it is going to take some time. So you might want to pause the video here to remember the names of the 6 global ecosystems or biomes. Okay, question number 5. What is the name that we give all plants in a food chain? So there's a name, we call them this because they can create their own energy using sunlight and rainfall. So what is the name that we give plants in every ecosystem? Okay, question number 6. I like this one. If there's 2 species that work together, so 2 species that work together, then what is that relationship called? They have a something relationship. Okay, question number 7. Looking at our map that we drew literally in week 1, can you name the continent, and remember it's a tricky one, in the lowest southeast corner of the world? And can you name this continent here? It's the one that you live on. So, take your time to answer the questions. If you need to pause and go back, not a problem. I will see you in just a minute for the answers. Well done. Okay, right, let's go through the answers. So, question 1 was, what is the name of the ecosystem that we studied in Canada? That is, of course, the tundra. Then question 2 was, what type of plants grow in Canada? And that one, or what type of trees grow in Canada, they are coniferous. So say it again, coniferous. It's a tricky one. Then it was, what animal consumes the snowshoe hare? So that's the Canadian lynx. And question number 4. Name the global ecosystem starting at the equator, working to the poles, using the acronym to help you. So let's remember the acronym, the sad dog through the poo. So let's have a look at our list. We should have tropical rainforest, the sad savanna, dog, desert, T, temperate forest, T, tundra, and P, polar. Okay, so you might notice as well that actually now we have studied Borneo, which was the tropical rainforest. We've studied Botswana, which was our savanna. We've studied Canada, which was our tundra. And we've studied Antarctica, which was our polar region. So that probably gives you a clue about which one we might be studying in today's session. Right, question number 5. What do we call all plants in every ecosystem? So they are producers, begins with a P, plants. And then last but not least, what do we call 2 animals that are working together? So like our marine iguana that we looked at in the Galapagos, what relationship he had with... Why has it gone out of my head again? I've gone completely blank. It's not a nightingale. It's a... Oh my gosh, you're going to have to help me. Text in your answers or get your mum to message it to me because I've completely forgotten. But they have what's called a symbiotic relationship. Okay, last 2 questions then. So the first one was, what is the name of this continent here that's right in the southeast corner? So as you know, that one is Australasia. And we looked at Fraser Island. And then the continent that we're going to have a look at today is Europe. Now that's cool because that's the continent that you guys actually live in. So today's session is actually all about where we live. Now I often think that people think the place that they live is boring. And I think it's because you just get used to it. Like, you're used to seeing the different plants that we have here. You're used to seeing the different animals. But actually, when we learn a little bit about those plants and those animals, it actually makes the whole world that we live in more interesting. Because when you go for a walk or you go out in your garden, you know more about what you're looking at. Right, I'm going to pause the video there, get all your bits and bobs together, so your paper, your colour pencils, and meet me back here in a sec. So, today's session is actually all about the ecosystem that we have in the United Kingdom, and it's called temperate forest. Now, because geography is never easy, there is another name for this. Sometimes we call it temperate deciduous forest. But there's a reason why, and I'm going to explain what that means in just a second. So I want you to say the words after me first of all. Temperate, deciduous. That one's really hard to say, so we'll say it again. Deciduous forest. Okay, now what that means is it means that we have an ecosystem here that's different to the one in Canada. And again, it's all to do with our climate, it's all to do with our temperature and our rainfall. Now, you will know this, but in the UK, we actually have a huge change in temperature throughout the year. So we have what's called a seasonal climate. In our winter, temperatures can be as low as -1 when it's cold and your mum makes you put a coat on when you've got to walk to school and your hands are cold when you get in the car. But then in the summer, we have some quite nice temperatures like it is today, although I have just put my jumper on because it's a little bit windy. But we have quite nice temperatures which can go up to sort of 21, 22 degrees. So we have a massive what's called range in temperature, from very cold in the winter to very warm in the summer. And we also, and you'll know this, we have changes in our rainfall. So in the winter and in the autumn, we get more rainfall. And then in the summer, we get less rainfall. Now, because of those two things, because of the climate, so the temperature and the rainfall, we have a type of plant that grows here that is unbelievably clever. And you will have walked past these trees, these plants, without paying any attention to them because they're what you see every day. But it's actually really important that we start to understand what they are. So what I've done is I've gone off into the garden my garden, and I have found some leaves off a tree in my garden, okay? Now, I'm just going to pick one of those leaves, and I want you to have a really, really good look at it. So you can see that that leaf is quite big, and it's quite wide, and it's got this jiggedy-jaggedy edge, and then you can see down the middle, it's got the vein, and then it's got veins coming off it like that. Now, you'll have seen leaves like this so many times. They're green as well, which we know leaves are always green. But in the UK, they don't stay green all year round, and we need to figure out why. So essentially, the thing that makes this leaf green is something called chlorophyll. Now, that is not an easy word again, so we'll say it again, chlorophyll. Now, the chlorophyll in the leaf is what the plant uses to take in the sunlight, take in the rainfall, and create its own energy. But in the autumn and the winter, when our temperature drops a bit lower, there's not enough warmth, essentially, to keep the chlorophyll alive. So the chlorophyll begins to die. And that's when our leaf turns from this nice green, like it is now in the spring, summer, but actually to a red or a brown before it falls off the leaf, falls off the tree and dies. Now, this is really important, and it's really, really clever, because essentially what the tree is doing is the tree is hibernating. In the winter, there's not enough sunlight for the trees in the UK to make their own energy, so it just sort of goes to sleep for a few months to conserve its energy and wait for the sun to come out again in the spring. This is why I think trees are absolutely amazing. So, what we're going to do, first of all, on our piece of paper, is using the pencil, I would like you to divide your page into 4. Now, I'll show you what I mean. You're just going to use a pencil like that to just create these separations on the page. So you've essentially, look, you've got your piece of paper with 4 sections on it. And then I want you to draw the land, okay? So it's going to look a little bit like that. There we go, it's a bit windy. There, okay? Now, we're going to put the name of a different season at the top of each box. So I'm going to start with winter. And then after winter comes spring. Then after spring we have the nicest part of the year, in my opinion, summer. And then we go into autumn. Now, what we're going to do across our page is we're going to draw a tree in the UK at each of those different times of the year. So in the winter, our tree is not going to have any leaves on it at all. In the spring, we're going to have a tree that has some smaller leaves that are just starting to come out. Then in the summer, we're going to have a tree that's absolutely covered in these beautiful big, remember the wide shape that I showed you, leaves. And then in the autumn, we're going to have another tree with the same leaves on it, but they're going to have changed colour to brown or red. Now, I'm going to draw mine, and you can make a start on drawing yours, and then come back and have a look in a second once I've drawn mine. So that took me a little while, but I'm actually quite proud of this. So if we have a look, here are my 4 trees. So I've got my tree in winter, when it's completely stripped bare, there's no leaves on it at all because the tree, remember, has gone into hibernation. Then I've got spring, and you can see these tiny little buds coming out across the tree. And that's because the trees realise that the temperature is high enough that it can begin to photosynthesize again. It can begin to produce its own food. Then we've got summer. And during the summer, that's when the leaves are out in full. There's so much sunlight, there's more rainfall, and there we get this beautiful kind of covering across the trees. And actually you can see on some of my leaves, I've really been quite detailed and gone on and drawn the veins. And then we've got autumn. So in autumn, we've got the leaves that have turned the red and the orange colour. Now, there's a few things that I want us to add to make sure that we're really clear about what's happening. So get your pencil And the first thing I want you to do is to add a label in winter, which is essentially saying that the tree is hibernating. Now I'm going to make sure I spell that correctly. So we have it here, the tree is hibernating. So it has no leaves. Then we've got spring. So here, what we're going to talk about is the fact that there is enough sunlight and, remember, rainfall, for the tree to begin to grow leaves. So it's quite a big label, this one. I will hold this up for quite a time so you can see it. So we've got the fact that there is enough sunlight and rainfall for the tree to begin to grow leaves. Okay, then we have the summer, and this is when we would call the tree in bloom, okay? This is when we've got our tree in bloom. Now remember what I said was making the leaves green, so it's called chlorophyll. Again, not an easy word to spell, but we've got it there, chlorophyll. That's what allows the tree to take in the sunshine and take in the rainfall and turn it into food. And then what we've got in the autumn, that's when we've got our leaves are dying. And can anyone remember why I said that was happening? So good, it was because the lower temperature causes the chlorophyll to die, which causes the leaf to change colour. Now, the one thing that I haven't added to my diagram, which we definitely need to do, is we know that during the autumn to the winter, those leaves fall off the tree. And actually, they end up at the bottom of the tree on the ground. Now, that's really important for what we're going to talk about next. So can you get your colour pencils out again and just draw some of these orange and red leaves just on the ground. I'm going to add the little veins to these because I think it makes them look good and I like it and it looks pretty. So in the autumn we've got our leaves on the ground. Now that has a special name. When those leaves are all over the ground, it's the same name that we would give it if human beings threw rubbish on the ground. So we actually call it the litter, but I call it leaf litter just to make it extra clear. So we're going to add that label as well. So on the ground we have got our leaf litter. Now you will notice, hopefully next autumn, that when the leaves begin to fall to the ground and they begin to die, something starts to happen to them. They don't just stay there forever. There aren't just piles and piles and piles of dead leaves on the pavement, because something does begin to happen. They begin to break down, and the word for that, and we've learned this word already, is they begin to decompose. Now, decompose means essentially to break down and get smaller. Now, when our leaves decompose, there's actually a whole load of different amazing species that do this, and they are called the decomposers. But the one that we're going to focus on today is an earthworm. Now, I'm going to set you some homework at the end of this session, so I'm going to ask you to go and find your own earthworms. But we are going to draw an earthworm underneath our leaf litter. So I'm going to show you a picture first. I want you to have a really good look at the earthworm, and then I'll come back to you. Right, so you've had a good look. You will probably recognise those. There's probably lots of them in your garden. And as I say, at the end of this, I'm going to get you to go and find one. Now, what I want you to do on your piece of paper, we're going to draw a larger than real life earthworm, okay? So they look just like little snakes. So we're going to draw that on our page. And remember from the picture that you just looked at, they've got lines all the way down them. Now, earthworms are amazing because they don't actually have a head or a tail. And actually, if you chop an earthworm in half, not that we are because that's cruelty to animals, but if you chop one in half, it can live and it can just become 2 new worms. As I say, we're not trying that at home. But our earthworm is what we call, as I say, a decomposer. They break down all of the dead leaves and they help to return the nutrients that's in the leaves into the soil. So, you can see, I've drawn my earthworm there. Just a little guy, a little bit wrinkly. I'm going to colour him in a light brown, I think, because that's the sort of colour that earthworms are. And, as I say, these guys, they are really clever because they return all of the nutrients that are trapped inside these leaves into the soil. So we're just going to add some arrows to show that that's happening because it's really clever. So I'm going to put nutrients returned to the soil. Okay, so that happens in the winter. Sorry, in the autumn and in the winter. And then what's super cool about this is in spring and in summer, those nutrients that the earthworm has returned into the soil get sucked back up into the tree by its roots and help a new tree to grow. So leaf litter isn't rubbish, it's actually really, really important because it has all these nutrients, it provides food for the earthworm then helps break those nutrients down, they go back into the soil, which then 6 months later, the tree begins to absorb to help it grow again. So this is what I mean. I know that often we think our own ecosystems are boring. This is not boring. Right, the last part of today then, we're going to draw the animal that eats our earthworms. So I'm going to put a picture up on the screen for you now. I think they're beautiful. Lots of people don't like them. Have a look at this animal. I wonder if any of you have ever even seen one. I've only seen one once in the UK, but have a look now. Okay, so you've had a good look. That is our friend, the badger. Now, badgers are incredibly, incredibly shy. And the reason that we don't see them very often is because they actually live underground in something that we call a set. Now, I'm going to show you a picture of a set right now, but these can be up to 50 metres long. So if you ever find one when you're out walking in the countryside, that is where a badger lives. And as I say, it could be 50 metres hidden underground. Okay, so you've had a look at the set. Now, the other cool thing about badgers that people often don't know is that actually they live together in groups. Now, they live together in groups of badgers, between 6 to 8 badgers in a group. And those 6 to 8 badgers, what they do is they kind of take over an area of land and they build their badger sets underneath the ground. And then they don't want any other badger in that area because they don't want the badger eating their earthworms, because 60% of what a badger eats is earthworms. And they don't want the badgers mating with, ooh, sorry, I've dropped my iPad. They don't want the badgers, there we go. They don't want the other badgers kind of mating with each other. They like to stay in their group. So I haven't really talked about poop enough today, so I'm going to talk about it again. So what badgers do is in the area where their sets are, where they live in their groups of 6 to 8, they go and poop on the boundary of that. And the idea is that a badger that comes from another group would smell the scent of their poop and won't come into that area and therefore won't try and steal its food and won't try and mate with its women. So what I would like you to do now is I would like you to draw the badger. So I'm going to put another picture back up. Have a look at the badger now and we're going to draw the badger. Hi. So I had to move back inside because it was cold and the battery on the iPad ran out. I'm having a right day of it. So you guys should also have drawn your badger. And like we always do, we're going to add our arrow to show the direction of the energy. So we've got the energy moving from the earthworm into our badger. So our badger is a consumer of the earthworm. And if we remember, I said that the earthworms were an example of a decomposer. Right, that means that we've got today our temperate deciduous forest ecosystem drawn and on our sheet. Now, I have a little bit of homework for you because we can actually go out and study this. And in geography, that's one of the things that we always try and do is go out and look at things in real life. So the first thing that I want you to do for homework this week is I want you to go and have a look underneath some rocks or some leaves in your garden or in the park. And I want you to see if you can find an earthworm. But if you can't, what other bugs are you finding? How big are they? What kind of environment do earthworms like to live in? So that's homework number 1. And then the other thing that I want you to do is this. Now, I showed you what the leaves look like in a deciduous forest earlier, and we saw that they are big and round and they've got a big body with veins down the middle. They are our type of leaf that we get here. But when I went and looked in my own garden, I also found some of these. Now, this should look familiar because this is our coniferous forest. So what is this doing in the UK? What is it doing in my garden? Now, essentially what happened was that years and years and years ago, travellers went around the world and they saw coniferous plants and they thought, wow, they're really beautiful. And they brought some back to live in the UK and they planted them here. So these coniferous plants, they shouldn't be here. They're what we call an alien species. Now, what I want you to do the next time you go for a walk or the next time you're in your garden is I want you to see if you can spot any aliens. So I want you to see how many coniferous aliens you can find. Right, have an amazing week. Get your mum and dad to send me a picture of your work as ever because it puts a massive smile on my face and it makes this whole thing worthwhile. I hope that you have had fun and I will see you soon. Oh, and which biome must we be looking at next week? So if we've got the sad dog through the poo, we've got our tropical rainforest, savanna, D is for desert. That's where we're going next week. See you later.